She took 3 melons to marry a billionaire heir. The black bride became an unexpected hero. "Slow down, Mama, you're gonna miss the bus again," Kendra shouted, slipping her sneakers on one foot at a time while balancing her phone between shoulder and ear. Her mother's voice buzzed through the speaker, raspy from a night shift at the nursing home. "Baby, don't worry about me. You just get to work on time. I've been doing this longer than you've been alive." Kendra huffed, slinging her thrifted handbag over her shoulder as she grabbed the last banana off the kitchen counter. "Yeah, and I'm trying to make sure you don't have to anymore." She ended the call and sprinted out of their small brick duplex in East Atlanta, one hand still zipping her coat as she chased the number 5 bus down the block. She caught it just in time, offering the driver an apologetic smile as she swiped her card. The seat near the back smelled faintly of fried food and tired dreams. She didn't mind. It was better than the worn cushion at her receptionist desk. At 27, Kendra Williams was a summa cum laude graduate with a degree in public administration and a mountain of student loans. Since graduation, she'd been juggling 2 jobs, full-time receptionist at a downtown firm and part-time waitress at a local soul food diner, barely making ends meet. Her baby brother Jalen was in his 2nd year of college, and their mother Lorraine had early-stage arthritis but refused to stop working. Every dollar Kendra made was accounted for, every hour worked a step toward a dream she couldn't yet see clearly. The only escape was the 2 a.m. journal entries she wrote in bed, thoughts scribbled in the margins of overdue bills. She didn't have time for dating, for travel, for anything outside of survival. And still, there was a constant whisper in her mind. This can't be all there is. That whisper turned into something louder the day she bumped into a stranger at the corner of Broad Street and Ellis. "Whoa, you okay?" the man asked as she stumbled back, clutching her coffee. Kendra blinked, stunned. The man looked out of place. Tailored coat, expensive loafers, wristwatch that probably cost more than her car. She offered a tight smile, brushing a drop of coffee off her blouse. "Yeah, sorry, I wasn't looking." He looked at her for a second too long, then nodded. "You work at Grayson Legal?" "Receptionist," she replied, surprised he recognized the logo on her badge. "You?" "I used to work downtown. I run a few investments now." He handed her a card. It read, Lincoln Heir, founder, Heir Equity Group. Her eyes widened. "Wait, you're the Lincoln Heir? From the Innovate Tech buyout last year?" He laughed. "That depends. Am I going to get hate for it?" "No," she said, cracking a genuine smile. "But maybe a long-winded opinion on corporate ethics." Lincoln grinned. "I like opinions." That was the first of 3 chance encounters. Then he stopped calling them coincidences. The 4th time, he asked her to coffee. "You don't have to pretend to be interested," she told him, stirring her drink, defensive. "You're not the first rich guy who tried to play savior." "I'm not trying to save you, Kendra," Lincoln said, serious now, "but I have a proposal." "And no, it's not what you think." She raised an eyebrow. "My grandfather, Noah Hale, he's 87, owns most of what I now run. He's old school, conservative, hates that I'm unmarried, and thinks legacy means bloodline and marriage certificate. He's threatening to disinherit me unless I settle down with someone appropriate." Kendra sat back, folding her arms. "And you think a black girl from East Atlanta with student debt and 2 jobs screams appropriate to him?" "He's from Alabama, so no. That's why I told him I'd marry someone who's everything he wouldn't approve of. He gave me an offer, one I want to counter." Kendra narrowed her eyes. "Get to the part where I'm supposed to care. I'll pay you $3 million. In return, we marry. Stay married for a year, publicly. Convince him. You do what you want with the money after. No strings beyond the terms we agree on. After that, we file for divorce." She burst out laughing. "You're insane." "Probably. 3 million? Why me?" "Because you're smart. Grounded." "Real. And because I don't want someone from my circle, I need someone who won't try to make it permanent." She stared at him, pulse pounding. Her family's bills, her brother's tuition, her mother's medication. A chance to rewrite the future. But at what cost? "I'm not some pawn in your corporate chess game," she said finally. "I'm not asking you to be," Lincoln said. "I'm asking you to be my partner, just not in the romantic sense. And if your granddad cuts you off anyway." Lincoln gave her a rare smile. "Then I finally get to build something from scratch. And you walk away 3 million richer." That night, Kendra didn't sleep. She sat on her floor, back against the wall, staring at the ceiling. 3 million, no strings, no love. Just a deal. But every deal has fine print, doesn't it? She talked to Pearl, her roommate since college. "I'm scared," Kendra admitted. "What if it's a trap?" "Then you walk," Pearl said. "But if it's real, you could pay off everything." "Start over. Build something you actually want." A week later, Kendra called Lincoln. "I want the contract in writing. I want my own lawyer to review it. I want monthly deposits into my mother's medical fund, and I want full control of my own money." "You'll get it," he said. "And Lincoln? Yeah? I don't fall in love, so don't try anything cute." Lincoln paused. Noted. They married quietly in a courthouse in Savannah, Georgia. No guests, no cake, no vows beyond what was required. Noah Hale, furious at the news, refused to meet her. Lincoln shrugged it off. "Give him time." "He likes drama. He'll come around." Kendra wasn't so sure. They moved into one of the Hale residences, a modern mansion in Buckhead, cold and lifeless. Her room was on the opposite wing. No shared meals, no couple photos. Just staged appearances at charity events, business functions, and the occasional magazine feature. "She's so graceful," reporters would say. "She's a gold digger," whispered others. Kendra smiled through it all. She had agreed to play a part, and she was going to play it to perfection. But it wasn't the public that scared her. It was Lincoln, because beneath the sarcasm, the cold logic, and the contract, there was someone real. Someone she caught reading books on criminal justice reform. Someone who bought her favorite snacks without asking. Someone who, when her mother ended up in the ER after a flare-up, had flown a private doctor down in the middle of the night. "Why'd you do that?" she'd asked him. He'd looked at her and said, "Because you didn't ask me to." And in that moment, Kendra realized something terrifying. She was starting to care. But caring wasn't part of the deal, and deals, they always come due. It had only been 3 weeks since the courthouse wedding, but it felt like Kendra had stepped through a portal into another universe. Her new reality was tailored suits, high-end interiors, and security detail that never spoke unless absolutely necessary. And yet, beneath the marble floors and polished glass, something colder lingered. An invisible line between her and everyone else in Lincoln Hale's world. At first, she tried to avoid him. They had agreed on boundaries. No romance, no obligations beyond public appearances. But Kendra couldn't ignore the fact that, behind closed doors, Lincoln was more complex than she'd thought. He wasn't the caricature of a spoiled billionaire. He read late into the night, held meetings with non-profits, and once, when he thought no one was watching, stopped to fix a fallen bicycle for a kid on the sidewalk. Still, he kept his distance from her. And she from him, until the gala. The Hale Foundation's annual charity gala was one of Atlanta's most exclusive events. It was also the first time Kendra would be publicly introduced as Lincoln's wife. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the strap of her deep emerald gown. Pearl, who'd come to help with her hair, hovered behind her with a curling iron. "You look like you're about to throw up," Pearl said, smirking. Kendra groaned. "Do I have to do this?" "You married a billionaire, Kendra. You don't get to skip galas. That's the trade-off." Just then, Lincoln stepped into the room. He paused, taking her in with a look that didn't try to hide his surprise. "You look good." Kendra raised an eyebrow. "That sounded painful for you to say." Lincoln straightened his tie, a slight smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Don't get used to it." But she noticed the way he lingered at the door before finally turning to leave. The event was held at the High Museum of Art, with a sleek glass exterior and sweeping modern design that made Kendra feel like she'd accidentally walked onto the set of a James Bond movie. The moment they entered, flashbulbs exploded. Reporters, photographers, guests in tuxedos and gowns, everyone turned. Lincoln reached for her hand. Instinctively, Kendra pulled back. "What are you doing?" He leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're watching. We need to sell the story." Reluctantly, she let him take her hand, and as they walked together through the crowd, she felt the weight of every stare. The whispers, the side eyes, the veiled curiosity about who she was and why she, out of all the polished socialites in Atlanta, had become the wife of Lincoln Hale. But she didn't shrink. She smiled. She stood tall. She made conversation that wasn't just polite, but captivating. By the end of the night, even the most skeptical of donors were laughing at her jokes and calling her a breath of fresh air. Then came the twist. They were halfway through the evening when Kendra was introduced to Noah Hale. She had only seen him in pictures. Cold eyes, stern expression, always in monochrome suits, but in person, Noah was more severe than she imagined. His presence was quiet but heavy, and his eyes, when they landed on her, carried the sharpness of a man who had spent decades dismantling empires. "So," he said, shaking her hand, "you're the woman who cost me a real legacy." Kendra didn't flinch. "Only if you define legacy by bloodline, instead of character." A flicker of something passed through his eyes. Annoyance? Amusement? She couldn't tell. Lincoln stiffened beside her, but she didn't look his way. Noah gave a tight nod. "Let's see how long this little show lasts." As the evening wore on, Kendra retreated to the edge of the gallery to take a break. Her feet ached, and the constant performance was starting to wear on her. That's when she overheard it. Two women stood near the sculpture exhibit, sipping champagne and speaking just loud enough. "She's clearly just here for the money," one whispered. "3 million! I'd marry a goat." The other laughed. "Lincoln's a fool if he thinks a girl like her belongs in this world." Kendra stood frozen. It wasn't the words. They were predictable. It was how familiar they sounded. She had heard them in college, in job interviews, in boardrooms where no one thought she belonged. And still, here she was. They could whisper, but she had earned her place, contract or not. Later that night, as they got into the town car, Lincoln sat beside her silently. But before they pulled away, he turned to her. "What you said to my grandfather. That was brave." She glanced at him, surprised. "I meant it," she said. "He doesn't scare me." "Good," Lincoln replied, "because he's planning something." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, as if weighing whether to tell her. "He's hired a private investigator to dig into your past." Kendra felt her stomach drop. "I'm not worried," she said quickly, though her voice was tighter than she wanted it to be. "I've got nothing to hide." "I just thought you should know," Lincoln said quietly. "He's not just going to accept this. He's looking for a reason to ruin it." They rode the rest of the way in silence. Kendra stared out the window, her thoughts racing. She had taken the money, signed the contract, played the part, but now it was no longer a game. She was in enemy territory, and the only way to win was to stop playing defense. From that night on, she wasn't just Lincoln Hale's wife. She was his partner in strategy, his co-conspirator in a war she hadn't started, but damn well planned to finish. And Noah Hale. He had no idea what kind of woman he'd just dared to cross. The next morning, Kendra woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing furiously on the nightstand. It was Pearl. "Girl, have you checked Twitter?" her friend whispered, panic bleeding through her voice. Kendra rubbed her eyes. "No." "Why?" "You're trending." Kendra sat up straight, dread blooming in her chest. She opened her Twitter app, and there it was. #GoldDiggerWife. At first, it was just photos of her from the gala, the emerald gown, her hand in Lincoln's. Then the captions hit like a slap to the face. "She took 3 lands and married into wealth. How long before she takes the house too? Lincoln Hale's wife was a barista 2 years ago. Can we talk about that? Respect to the hustle. She secured generational wealth with a smile." Kendra's stomach turned. "They found my past," she muttered. She scrolled through more posts, some mocking, some cruel, and a few defending her. But the balance was off. The internet had cast its verdict, and Kendra was the villain in a narrative she hadn't even written. Lincoln knocked once before stepping into the room. "You saw it?" She nodded without looking up. "I told you my grandfather was digging," he said. "I thought he was just bluffing," she replied. "I didn't think it would hit this fast." Lincoln sat across from her, his posture rigid. "Noah doesn't bluff. If he couldn't find anything illegal, he made sure to make your background seem humiliating." Kendra looked at him, anger simmering beneath the surface. "So what now? I disappear until it blows over." "Let your grandfather keep painting me as some charity case who lucked into his empire." Lincoln didn't answer immediately. His jaw clenched, his eyes narrowed. "We fight back." "That is, if you're willing to play offense." "I didn't grow up with silk pillowcases and chauffeurs, Lincoln," she said, voice rising. "But I wasn't some scammer. I earned everything I got." "I took your grandfather's offer because it was business, and I kept my end of the deal. I won't let a man like him twist that." A beat passed. "Good," Lincoln said softly. "Because I'm done letting him call the shots." That afternoon, Kendra called her mother. "Mama, please don't panic, okay?" she said the moment her mom picked up. "I saw it," her mother replied quietly. "And I've already prayed over every single one of those trolls." Kendra chuckled despite herself. "You didn't have to do that. I know who you are," her mother said firmly. "And if marrying that man bought you the freedom you needed to help this family, then I'll stand by every decision you've made." "But you need to protect your name, Kendra. They don't get to decide your story." That night, Kendra sat in front of the mirror for a long time. She stared at her reflection, searching for something. Doubt, regret, fear. But all she saw was resolve. The next morning, she called a press conference. Lincoln raised an eyebrow when she told him. "Are you sure?" "I won't sit quiet while they eat me alive," she said. "This is my life, too." They held it in the garden of the Hale estate. Cameras, reporters, and flashing bulbs filled the air. Kendra stepped up to the podium in a simple navy dress, no jewelry, no theatrics. Just her voice. "I know what you've read. I know the names you've called me," she began. "And I'm here to tell you, yes, I was offered money to marry Lincoln Hale, and yes, I accepted it." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "But what the headlines won't tell you is why," she continued. "I didn't come from wealth. I come from a single mother who worked 2 jobs so I could have a chance. I graduated at the top of my class, worked my way through college, and I was drowning in medical bills for my mother when I got an offer. It was a business arrangement, and I accepted it. Not because I wanted a rich man's name, but because I wanted a better future for my family. Cameras clicked faster. You can hate me. You can doubt my motives, but you can't take away my work ethic, my principles, or my love for the people who raised me. She paused, scanning the crowd. And for the record, this was supposed to be a 3-year arrangement. But now I'm not sure where we stand, because somewhere between the paperwork and the press releases, something real began to grow, and I won't apologize for that either. She stepped back from the mic. The reporters were stunned silent for a moment. Then chaos erupted. Questions, shouts, flash after flash. But Kendra had said what needed to be said. That night, while the media buzzed and debates exploded online, Kendra sat on the couch in their living room, sipping tea. Lincoln walked in, hands in his pockets. You didn't have to say what you said, he told her. Not all of it. Yes, I did, she said. You're not the only one with something to lose. He moved closer. You meant it? About something real growing? She looked up at him, her gaze steady. Did you? Lincoln didn't speak right away, but then he sat beside her quietly and said the one thing he hadn't been able to before. I haven't thought about another woman since the day I met you. Kendra blinked, caught off guard. He smirked slightly. What, too much? She shook her head. No. Just unexpected. He leaned back, lacing his fingers behind his head. Well, you did sign up for unexpected. You just didn't know it would come with feelings. Kendra smiled softly. Feelings don't scare me. What scares me is what your grandfather's going to do next. Lincoln's smile faded. Then it's time we made our next move, before he does. And just like that, they weren't pretending anymore. The war wasn't over, but now, they were fighting it together. It had been 5 days since Kendra's press conference, and the dust was only beginning to settle. Social media was split. Some still labeled her a sellout, while others praised her honesty. But inside the Heir mansion, the mood was far from quiet. Lincoln's grandfather, Noah Heir, sat in his private study, eyes narrowed at the replay of Kendra's statement. The glass of scotch in his hand trembled ever so slightly as he reached forward and paused the video. She's more dangerous than I thought, he muttered. Across from him, Dean Carmichael, Noah's longtime legal advisor, adjusted his glasses. You underestimated her, Dean said plainly. She turned the narrative with a single speech. Your silence made it worse. People are starting to question whether you coerced her into the deal. Noah scoffed. Let them question. What matters is what happens next. Dean hesitated. Sir, what do you plan to do? Noah leaned back slowly, his expression unreadable. Lincoln will never inherit Heir International unless I'm sure he's capable. This girl, she's clouding him. So we clear the cloud. Meanwhile, at the Heir estate, Kendra was starting to adjust to the rhythms of her new life. But she hadn't forgotten her goal. Gain financial security, protect her family, and, if necessary, walk away clean when the time came. What she hadn't accounted for was how natural it began to feel being around Lincoln. He was still rough around the edges, moody, dismissive at times, but now there were moments. Shared coffee in the mornings, quiet dinners, subtle glances when they thought the other wasn't looking, and it all confused her. That afternoon, Kendra met with Lincoln in his home office, where he'd been reviewing internal audit reports. Why are you so stressed? She asked, bringing him a mug of black coffee. Lincoln glanced up, eyes tired. Because things aren't adding up. Someone's been leaking our internal strategy documents. Nothing sensitive, but enough to mess with partnerships. Your grandfather? She asked instinctively. I thought so. But this feels sloppier. He paused, tapping a finger against his lip. You think someone else inside Heir is trying to sabotage you? I think someone wants me to fail, and if they can paint you as the reason, even better. Kendra sat on the edge of the desk. So we find out who it is before they pin this on me. Simple. Lincoln raised an eyebrow. You keep saying we. That's new. I'm your wife, remember? She said, half joking. Whether you like it or not. Before he could respond, Kendra's phone buzzed. It was Pearl. She answered on speaker. Hey, what's up? You need to come downtown, Pearl said, her voice tight. Now, something's going down at your mom's pharmacy. Kendra's blood ran cold. What happened? Cops just showed up with a warrant. Someone reported her for distributing expired meds. What? That's a lie, Kendra shouted, already grabbing her purse. She doesn't even handle the stock anymore. Exactly, Pearl snapped. But they're serious. You need to fix this. Lincoln didn't even hesitate. Let's go, he said, grabbing his keys. They arrived to find police cars parked outside the small pharmacy Kendra's mother co-owned with a neighbor. Crowds had gathered. Reporters, too. Kendra's mother, Evelyn, stood outside with tear-streaked cheeks, explaining to officers that she hadn't touched the supply inventory in months. Please, she told the officer calmly. I've been recovering from surgery. I haven't worked a full shift in weeks. One of the officers turned toward Kendra as she approached. Ma'am, you're her daughter? I am. And I'm her legal power of attorney. Who made the complaint? The officer hesitated. It came through an anonymous tip line. Kendra's eyes narrowed. And you didn't verify it before showing up with cameras? Lincoln stepped in. Detective, I'd advise you to be very careful. This family is under public scrutiny, and if this was staged, there will be legal consequences. The detective shifted awkwardly, realizing who he was speaking to. Kendra turned to her mother and whispered, I'll handle this. Just breathe. Back at the mansion that night, Lincoln slammed his fist on the table. It's coordinated. First the media, now your mother. This is beyond a smear campaign. It's personal. Kendra nodded. Someone's trying to force me out. She looked down, biting her lip. Do you think your grandfather's behind this? Lincoln didn't answer. Lincoln, she pressed. I don't know, he admitted. But if he is, I'll burn his empire down before I let him hurt you. The room fell into silence. Kendra was quiet for a long moment before she said, Then let's stop reacting and start exposing. If someone inside Heir is behind this, we need proof. Lincoln gave a slight smile. You want to go to war? She nodded. Then let's start playing offense. The next morning, Kendra went into Heir International under the pretense of visiting Lincoln for lunch, but she had another purpose. She walked confidently into the analytics floor, past the assistants and associates who stared at her with a mix of curiosity and judgment. In her bag was a small USB drive loaded with software, just enough to track who had accessed and copied internal documents in the past 2 weeks. It had been written by a friend from her college tech lab. She had hoped never to use it. But now it was time. As she plugged it discreetly into a vacant computer in the intern bullpen, her fingers trembled, but not from fear. From fury. Someone was going to pay, and when she found out who, she wouldn't just clear her name. She'd make them regret ever underestimating the girl who took $3 million to marry a billionaire, and became the last woman they should have tried to destroy. The air inside Heir International's headquarters was deceptively still, humming with the quiet tension of a power game being played behind polished glass and brushed steel. Kendra sat in Lincoln's private office, her laptop open, the USB drive blinking subtly. On screen was a list of access logs, lines of metadata running like digital fingerprints. "Who the hell is R. Salazar?" she muttered. Lincoln, pacing beside her, narrowed his eyes. "Raymond Salazar. He's head of business intelligence." "Then we have our leak," Kendra said, eyes glued to the screen. "He's accessed confidential documents from 3 different departments over the past 2 weeks, and all after midnight. Not to mention, one of the files matches the strategy memo that was leaked to that fake consulting firm." Lincoln cursed under his breath. "Salazar's been loyal to my grandfather for decades." "Of course, he's not working alone." Kendra leaned back in the chair. "You think Noah's giving orders?" "I don't think." "I know," Lincoln replied grimly. "This is exactly his style. Make it look like someone else is incompetent. Let them fall on their own." Kendra turned toward him. "Then we need to expose both of them. Publicly. If he's trying to ruin me, he's also trying to destroy your credibility as a leader." Lincoln didn't respond immediately. He looked at Kendra as if seeing her with new eyes. "You really want to go after him?" "I didn't take $3 million just to survive," she said quietly. "I'm going to thrive, and nobody, not your grandfather, not some corrupt exec, is going to stop me." That evening, they put a plan in motion. Kendra called Pearl, her longtime friend and tech-savvy confidant. "I need you to discreetly trace emails and file transfers from Salazar's system," she explained over the phone. "We've got the access logs. Now we need the receipts." "You're getting yourself into deep corporate waters," Pearl warned. "I know," Kendra said, "but I'm not drowning. I'm learning how to swim like a damn shark." The next day, Lincoln invited Salazar for a meeting. Nothing formal, just a quick chat in the executive lounge. Kendra watched from behind the tinted glass wall as the older man walked in, smooth as ever in a navy blazer, holding his favorite Cuban cigar. "You wanted to see me?" Salazar asked, taking a seat. "Just checking in," Lincoln replied. "There's been talk of leaks lately, some key documents floating around." Salazar didn't flinch. "Unfortunate but not surprising. You know this company, rife with snakes." "I've been wondering if someone close to us might be working against us." "Wouldn't be the first time," Salazar said with a cold smile. "Your grandfather made enemies when he handed you the reins." Lincoln nodded slowly. "Would be a shame if someone tried to derail what I've built." Salazar met his eyes, the smugness unmistakable. "People always test the young leaders. That's why your grandfather still keeps an eye on things." Kendra recorded the whole thing from the security room. That arrogance, that confidence in his impunity, was all she needed to see. The audio wasn't a smoking gun, but it was motive, tone, and implication. It was enough to stir doubt. Later that evening, Pearl called back. "Jackpot," she said. "Got a trail of forwarded files from Salazar's work email to an encrypted private server. Also, he's been in contact with a guy named Brendan Keyes, an online reputation manager who specializes in reframing public perception. Want to guess who just released a viral thread discrediting you?" "Send me everything," Kendra said. "All of it." Lincoln stared at her as she ended the call. "You're relentless." "No," she replied. "I'm just tired of being a scapegoat." They put together a file, a dossier with timestamps, email records, call logs, and Pearl's forensic trace. They drafted a letter addressed to Hale's board of directors and prepared a presentation. "You think they'll believe you?" Lincoln asked. "They won't have a choice," Kendra said. "I'm going to give them something undeniable. But before that, we make it public." "You want to leak it?" "No," Kendra smiled. "I want to hold a press conference." Lincoln blinked. "Are you sure you want to go public again?" She nodded. "The last time I went public, I defended myself. This time, I expose the corruption. 3 days later, the media gathered again on the steps of Heir International's headquarters. Kendra stepped up to the podium, this time in a navy suit with her natural curls pulled into a tight, confident bun. Lincoln stood behind her, silent, but present.
3 weeks ago, I stood here defending my name, Kendra began. Today, I'm standing for something bigger, truth inside this company, and accountability from those who think they're untouchable. She revealed everything. The data leaks, the sabotage attempts, the systemic targeting of her and her family. She never said Noah's name aloud, but she didn't have to. Some people believe marrying into wealth should silence you, make you grateful enough to never question the system, but I didn't sell my voice when I signed that marriage contract. And I didn't lose my values when I took that money. I used it to protect my family, and now I'm using my voice to protect the integrity of this company and everyone who works in it. The crowd erupted. Social media lit up again, but this time, the story wasn't gold digger takes 3 million. It was black woman stands up to billionaire dynasty. Inside his penthouse, Noah Hale watched the press conference unfold. He didn't speak. He didn't blink. When the screen faded to black, he turned to Dean Carmichael. She's going to be a problem. Dean adjusted his glasses. She already is. Kendra had crossed a line. But what no one knew, not even Lincoln, was that she was only getting started. The fallout from Kendra's press conference sent shockwaves across the corporate world. Within 48 hours, Heir International's board of directors scheduled an emergency internal review. News outlets labeled Kendra as the woman who exposed the machine from within, while hashtags like #BlackBrideBold and #HeroInHeels trended for days. But inside the company's towering Manhattan headquarters, the mood was anything but celebratory. Lincoln stood at the glass wall of his office, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. Behind him, Kendra paced, phone in hand, as Pearl briefed her on the board's next moves. "They're rattled," Pearl said, "but not broken. The board's trying to handle this quietly. They're bringing in an external investigator." "Which gives Noah time to clean house," Kendra muttered. "He's already fired 2 junior staffers from Salazar's department," Pearl added. "Blamed it on negligence. Classic deflection." Kendra rubbed her temples. "We don't have enough yet. The press ate up our statement. But legally, Salazar could still say the data traces were accidental. It's not enough to convict." Lincoln turned, his jaw clenched. "Then we go deeper." Kendra looked up. "You have a plan?" "Grandfather has a private archive. Physical documents, old acquisition records, confidential minutes, things he never digitized because he doesn't trust cloud storage. If there's something incriminating tying Noah to misappropriated funds or business fraud, it'll be in there." "Where is it?" "Off-site," Lincoln replied. "Old family estate in upstate New York. He still keeps an office there." Kendra didn't hesitate. "Then we're going." Lincoln paused. "You know if we get caught." "We won't," she said. "But if we do..." "Let them try and explain why 2 Hales had to break into their own estate just to find the truth." That night, they made the drive under the cover of darkness. The house was surrounded by tall hedges and dense trees. The security system was outdated, surprising for a family obsessed with control, and Lincoln bypassed it in under 5 minutes. The office was locked, but Lincoln used an old key his mother had given him years ago, claiming it was for emergencies. They slipped inside, the air thick with dust and age. Bookshelves lined the walls. A large mahogany desk sat in the center, untouched. Kendra immediately went to the filing cabinet, sifting through folders labeled in his grandfather's cursive. Acquisitions Q1, Q4. Employee settlements. Internal investigations. Then Lincoln spoke. "Here." He held up a thin folder marked Cassidy Fund, Private. Inside were printouts of wire transfers, offshore account records, and a contract. Kendra skimmed the pages, her hands shaking. Noah funneled millions into a dummy account listed under a former employee's name. This woman, Cassidy Barnes, died 4 years ago. He's been using her identity to embezzle from Heir International's philanthropy fund. She was head of community outreach, Lincoln said, voice hardening. She helped my mother launch literacy programs in the Bronx. Kendra stared at the page. So not only did he steal, he used the legacy of a dead black woman to cover his tracks. It was the proof they needed. Suddenly, a creak echoed in the hallway. Lincoln grabbed Kendra's wrist, pulling her to the side just as a flashlight beam swept across the door. They ducked behind the desk. Voices followed. "I thought Mr. Heir didn't come out here anymore," one guard said. "He doesn't, but Mr. Noah asked us to check in weekly." "Did you hear that?" "No. Just the wind." The guards lingered a moment longer, then moved on. Kendra exhaled silently, clutching the folder tight. They waited 10 minutes before slipping out the back, heartbeats steadying only when they were miles from the estate. Back in Manhattan, they spent the next 2 days preparing. Kendra contacted a legal team anonymously through a whistleblower portal. Lincoln worked with Pearl to authenticate the documents. By Friday, they were ready. The Heir boardroom had never been that full. Pressured by the mounting public scrutiny, every seat was occupied. Salazar sat stone-faced. Noah arrived late, his expression unreadable. Kendra entered in a sharp grey suit, head held high. She wasn't just a bride for hire anymore. She was a force. "We're here to present undeniable evidence," she began, "of internal corruption, identity theft, and financial embezzlement from the Cassidy Fund. Evidence implicating Mr. Noah Heir and Mr. Raymond Salazar." Gasps followed. Lincoln laid the folder on the table. "Inside are contracts, transfer logs, and false ledger entries dating back 3 years, all tied to offshore accounts in Cassidy Barnes's name." One board member stood. "You understand the weight of these accusations?" "Yes," Lincoln said. "That's why we didn't go to the press first. We came to you, because Heir International deserves to be better." Noah's voice finally cut through the silence. "This is ridiculous. My own nephew is trying to sabotage me because he couldn't handle the business on his own." "Actually," Kendra said, "I handled it quite well. Remember the parks contract your people tried to derail? I salvaged it, while you were busy building your little offshore empire." Salazar stood abruptly. "I won't be dragged into your personal vendettas." "You're not being dragged," Kendra replied. "You walked in with your eyes wide open." Noah's anger boiled over. "You were nothing but a woman we paid off to play wife." Kendra didn't flinch. "And yet here I am, pulling back the curtain on your empire." Funny how power shifts when truth enters the room. The board murmured. One by one, eyes turned toward Noah, then toward the chairperson. "We'll take this under advisement," the chairperson finally said. "Mr. Noah Heir, Mr. Salazar, until further notice, you are both suspended pending investigation." Effective immediately. Security arrived moments later. As the 2 men were escorted out, Noah locked eyes with Kendra. "You think this makes you a hero?" he spat. "No," she replied, "but it makes me free." That night, back in their apartment, Kendra stared out the window as city lights blinked below. "You okay?" Lincoln asked softly. She turned to him, eyes misty. "I didn't know it would feel like this." "Like what?" "Like winning and still feeling a little bit broken." Lincoln stepped closer. "That's what healing looks like." "Cracked, but not shattered," Kendra let herself lean into him, and for the first time it didn't feel like a contract. It felt like home. The fallout from Noah and Salazar's suspension rippled through the city like a tremor. By the following week, media vans parked outside Heir International. Analysts debated the unprecedented whistleblower case. Civil groups praised the bravery of the unnamed black woman insider, and while Lincoln and Kendra tried to maintain calm, a storm had only just begun. At the Heir penthouse, Kendra sat on the couch with her laptop open, fielding interview requests from every major outlet imaginable. "I can't talk to them," she said, scrolling through her inbox. "Not yet. It'll look like I'm exploiting the situation." Lincoln, shirtless and sipping black coffee, leaned against the kitchen counter. "They're going to talk about you whether you speak or not. You might as well control the narrative." She closed the laptop. "I didn't do it for clout." "I know," he said. But the world doesn't. The tension between them had shifted. There was no contract between them anymore. No unspoken terms. Only something fragile and real. Then Pearl burst into the penthouse uninvited, laptop in hand, face pale. "You need to see this," she said, not even waiting for permission. She dropped the laptop on the table and hit play. It was a leaked security video from 2 months ago. Noah Heir and Raymond Salazar in a private room at a country club, speaking freely about their tactics. "I don't care who we have to step on," Noah's voice said. "Kendra, that girl's just a placeholder. We needed a clean image, and her being black." "Bonus. Shows how inclusive we are. The media eats that up." Salazar laughed in the clip. "She's smarter than you think." "She's also desperate," Noah replied. "Women like her will always take the check. They have no idea how the game is played." The clip ended. Kendra was frozen, jaw tight, fists clenched in her lap. Lincoln's hand hovered above her shoulder, but didn't land. He knew better than to try and comfort her before she had the words. "I thought I was past this," Kendra whispered. "I thought the worst was behind me." Pearl sat next to her. "They didn't just underestimate you, Kay. They exposed their truth, their bigotry. That video won't just hurt them, it will burn them." Kendra stood up, shaky but determined. "Then we let it." That evening, the video was anonymously sent to every major network. By morning, it was headline news. Racist remarks surface from suspended Heir executives. Whistleblower's role expands. Did she save Heir or expose it? The backlash was immediate. Sponsors pulled out. Shareholders threatened lawsuits. Noah's face was plastered on every tabloid with captions like, "From billionaire to bigot," and "The fall of the empire's favorite son." But not all responses were negative. Emails poured in from young women, especially black women, saying how much Kendra's bravery meant to them. Some worked in tech, others in law. Some were just trying to get through college while taking care of siblings, like she once had. One message read, "You didn't just marry into power, you reclaimed it." For all of us. Despite it all, Kendra didn't feel heroic. She felt exposed. At home, she sat on the edge of their bed while Lincoln read a new report. "You were right," he said. "The board wants to restructure. They're offering me interim CEO." Kendra didn't react. "You'll take it?" He hesitated. "I will, if you help me rebuild it." She looked up. "I don't mean as my wife," he added. "I mean as Kendra Thompson, strategist, advisor, architect of everything that finally made this company honest." Her lip quivered, but she swallowed the emotion down. "You sure the world's ready for a black woman pulling the strings at Heir International?" "I'm not worried about the world," he said. "I'm worried about whether you'll say yes." Kendra stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or cry. And then, the doorbell rang. It was Simon Hale. He stood there in a dark grey overcoat,
looking more serious than either of them had ever seen him. "I watched the clip," he said.
"Every second. I knew my son was ruthless. I didn't know he was this." Lincoln stepped aside.
"Grandfather," Simon raised a hand. "No, let me speak." He looked at Kendra. "When I offered you that money, I thought I was buying protection for the company. What I got was something else entirely. I got a woman with more courage than half my board. And for that, I owe you more than an apology." Kendra nodded, eyes glossy. "I'd like to offer you a seat," Simon said. Lincoln raised an eyebrow.
"A what?" "A seat," Simon repeated. "On the board, effective immediately."
"You won't just consult. You'll vote. You'll lead." Kendra's mouth parted slightly, stunned. Simon looked at Lincoln. "You're not the only one rebuilding this company, son. She earned that right." As Simon left, Lincoln turned to Kendra with a slow, proud grin.
"Looks like the family just got a lot more interesting."
That night, as she lay in bed, Kendra couldn't sleep. Her thoughts were buzzing, not with fear, but with the weight of purpose. She had taken $3 million to change her life. Now she was being handed power, not bought, not borrowed, but earned. She thought about the little girl who used to believe life was a mountain only rich people could climb. And now, she was at the summit, looking down, planning to build a staircase for others. The unexpected bride had become an unexpected hero, and this was only the beginning. The newly appointed board of Heir International convened behind sleek glass doors overlooking the city skyline. For the first time in the company's long and tangled history, a black woman sat at the table, not as a token or temporary fixture, but as a force to be reckoned with. Kendra Thompson, the girl from East Side Baltimore, the bride who had once signed a contract, now signing policy. Simon Hale was at her left, silent for once. Lincoln sat across from her, not with dominance, but admiration. The agenda wasn't just numbers and forecasts. It was reform. And that morning, with a simple, deliberate motion, Kendra slid a thick folder onto the table. "The Hale Transparency Initiative," she announced. "A full audit of our partnerships, internal grievance processes, and hiring biases. Effective immediately." Some members shifted. Others stared. But no one interrupted. "I know this company was built on old-world money," she continued, locking eyes with a senior partner who had once questioned her credentials. "But the world isn't old anymore. And neither are we." A pause. Then Simon's voice broke the silence. "I second that." Motion carried. The room erupted in quiet nods. No applause, just gravity. Later, in the hallway, Pearl met her with a grin and a firm hug. "You really did it," Pearl said. "You turned a deal into a dynasty." "I'm not done," Kendra replied. "I'm just getting warmed up." Pearl held up her phone, already scrolling. "So, when's the TED Talk? Oprah's people have been liking your tweets." Kendra laughed, but her heart was heavy with something more profound. "Not yet. This isn't about branding. Not until I've made real change." Pearl raised a brow. "Sis, you already have." But there was more to come. Meanwhile, across the city, Noah Hale sat in a minimalist attorney's office, stripped of luxury and influence. His tie was gone. His once coiffed hair disheveled, a far cry from the man who once called Kendra a placeholder. The verdict had come down: removal from all corporate duties, asset freezes pending further investigations, and potential criminal charges for financial misconduct and discrimination practices under Title VII. When asked for comment by a persistent journalist outside the courthouse, Noah simply said, "I didn't think she'd go that far." But she did. And farther still. At home, Kendra curled up on the couch next to Lincoln.
now her husband not by contract, but by quiet, mutual choice. They'd fallen in love somewhere between all the silence and chaos, in glances across the boardroom and whispers after long nights of planning. But they had never defined it. Until now. "So," Lincoln said, turning toward her, "I heard you turned down Forbes' Woman of the Year cover." She smirked. "I told them I didn't want a crown. Just give me policy changes and a timeline." He kissed her knuckles. "God, I love you." The words caught her off guard. Not because she didn't believe them, but because he'd said them so freely, like they had always belonged to her. She smiled. "I love you too." Just then, a knock echoed from the front door. It was her younger brother, Malik, now in college thanks to Kendra's support. Behind him, their mother held a tray of peach cobbler. "We figured you could use a break from board meetings," her mother said, setting the tray down with pride. Malik threw himself on the couch, already pulling up his favorite Netflix show. "You two still rich or what?" he teased. "Working on it," Lincoln said with a wink. That night, laughter echoed through the house. The kind of laughter that was earned, built on sacrifice, survival, and second chances. As she sat with her family, Kendra glanced out the window at the city she now partially governed. She had been underestimated, dismissed, and nearly erased. But here she was, not just successful, not just wealthy, but impactful. She had taken $3 million to marry into a dynasty. What she gave back to the world was worth far more. And if you're reading this, if you're someone who's been told you don't belong, that your worth is measured in silence, Kendra's story isn't just a fantasy, it's a reminder. That the game is rigged, yes, but it's not unbreakable. You don't need to be born with power to change the rules. You just need to be brave enough to say no to staying small. Because heroes don't always come wearing capes. Sometimes they wear wedding rings and rewrite legacies. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you believe a little more in your own voice, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Let's build more stories that remind the world what courage looks like. This is Mr. Hope. Until next time.